Good afternoon. I got the lucky time slot, I think. It's the one that your lunch is probably kicking in, and then I've got the heavy topic. So I'm pretty excited to be here and present to you. However, I am, like Judith, just trying to stay on my feet. I've been keeping a sickness at bay, so if I can get to 5 o'clock tonight, I'll be absolutely thrilled. So with that, just so you know, if it doesn't seem to flow as nicely as it could have, probably because you can blame my daughter. All right. So financing, and I know this is the most important topic, and it's going to be the most heavily worded topic. So, have an idea for a business? It all starts with an idea. Does your idea complement what you do well or your community does well? If so, then you're in great shape to start formulating your idea into a business opportunity. It is a much safer bet to venture into familiar territory where you can use you or your community's strengths. And I say that because this is the most critical part of the process. Formulating your idea, getting your idea on paper, and then making sure that you have an appropriate match to what you can do within your community. And I think all of the presenters before me have identified that, and I'm just following up on that theme. This is really, really important. So some helpful hints. Do what will make you or your community happy. This helps to create positive energy for everyone involved with the project, which will help with financing. Be specific, set clear goals, look for opportunity. It's critical to define who your customers are and predict what their needs will be. This is essential in business. Time and time again, I've seen First Nations businesses fail because they fail to identify or understand their customers' needs or accept those customers into their territories. And this is a real problem that I've seen throughout the province. So this is it. This is one of the things I can say is an absolute helpful hint going forward is identify who your customers are and predict what their needs will be. Take your creativity and put it onto paper. Build a business plan or conduct a feasibility study. Key aptitudes to take into your business venture, specifically when seeking finance: perseverance, self-assurance, creativity, tolerance for ambiguity. Look for windows of opportunity. You have to have a lot of patience and a lot of willingness to understand what you don't know in order to succeed in some of these more difficult businesses, and especially businesses that are not traditional for us as First Nations. And I can think of a few, just like the technology sector for certain. Oops, this will be where... I don't know. There we go. All right. Develop a solid business plan. I think we've heard that a few times today, and we certainly heard it yesterday. If you're going to get money, or you want somebody to lend you money, you need to have a business plan. A business plan will serve as the most important tool in your business startup and in securing financing. Most lending institutions require a business plan to review prior to lending. The importance of a comprehensive, thoughtful business plan cannot be overemphasized. Much hinges on it. Outside funding, credit from suppliers, management of your operation and finances, promotion and marketing of your business, and achievement of your goals and your objectives. Revise the business plan as necessary. Business plans are not static, but rather should be a continuous work in progress. Here's an example of a table of contents of a business plan: executive summary, project description, industry description, market analysis, competitive analysis, operation and production plan, management plan, SWOT analysis, risk management, risk assessment, and financial projections. And remember, business plans are not static, but rather should be a continuous work in progress. So who can assist? Aboriginal Business Advisory Centers and First Nations lending institutions. To discuss your business idea or get business development information, contact Northeast Aboriginal Business Centre, Kootenay Aboriginal Business Development Agency, Prince George Aboriginal Development Centre, and they'll help you. What kind of support can an ABED provide you? Many Aboriginal entrepreneurs and communities can qualify for business development support, depending on the nature of your project. You may be able to obtain funding to assist with a wide range of activities, including business planning, establishment, capital costs, business acquisitions, business expansions, marketing initiatives that are local, domestic, or export-oriented, new product or process development, adding technology to improve operations and competitiveness, operating costs in association with capital cost, financial services, business support, business-related training, and mentoring services. ABED works with Aboriginal entrepreneurs and its partners to provide a range of services and supports that support the growth of a strong Aboriginal business sector in Canada. So, are you eligible? Clients must be individuals of Canadian Aboriginal heritage, status or non-status Indian, on or off reserve, Métis or Inuit, or a majority-owned Aboriginal business or Aboriginal community and or development corporation. To be eligible for support, clients should also be involved full-time with the proposed business in a management capacity and must be able to provide some level of cash equity to support the project. So, either I'm not tall enough, I'm not capable. Aboriginal financial institutions delivering Aboriginal business and entrepreneurship development are, and we have our own Chalmouth Economic Development Corporation, Talahout Aboriginal Capital Corporation, All Nations Development Corporation. Through the Program Delivery Partners Initiative, ANTSI partners with Aboriginal financial institutions, AFIs, to deliver funding for business development. AFIs are located in all regions of the country and are well positioned to meet the needs and aspirations of Aboriginal entrepreneurs and communities at the local level. AFIs have the responsibility for the management, distribution, and administration of an equity fund and have the authority to approve funding for activities up to a maximum of $99,999 for Aboriginal individuals and incorporated businesses, and up to $250,000 for community-owned businesses. So, what type of business are you creating? When starting a company, it is essential to select the business structure that best supports your goals. Business structures are chosen for the most part to comply with tax law, which treats each type of structure differently. There are 3 types of legal structures for a business: sole proprietorship, partnership, which is a form of proprietorship, and incorporation. Each has a distinct structure, require different requirements for financing. And this is an absolutely critical part, and I think you heard from many of the presenters before, if you're going into joint venture, partnership, all of these things require a legal structure around them. And especially for financing, because you're going to find out why. If I can ever, oops, there we go. I'll stop. Sole proprietorship. A sole proprietorship is informal and easily created, and therefore is the most common structure chosen by new businesses. In a sole proprietorship, the business and or the operator are the one and the same in the eyes of legal and tax authorities. Tax law treats business as an income source for the proprietor and therefore requires that the business financial details be listed in a separate section of the personal income tax form. The business's money and or responsibilities are the proprietor's and vice versa. This presents some possibilities for tax management on the part of the sole proprietor. The business generates a loss. That loss can be applied to reduce the income gained from other sources. This is why most part-time businesses are sole proprietorships. Sole proprietorships have a downside, however. The proprietor is personally liable for all functions and debts of the business. And this helps too if you're if your business is off reserve and then you work part-time on reserve, you can have some tax benefit advantages to this. Just saying. Oops. Partnership. When two or more people or corporations arrange to carry on business together, they can decide to form a partnership. There is no legal structure for a partnership. However, partners usually have some type of contractual agreement that governs in percentage terms the sharing of revenues, expenses, and tasks. The partners apply the same percentages to income and expenses on their personal income taxes. Three types of partnerships are general partnership. In a general partnership, the partners are responsible for all aspects of the business, including the depths of the partnership. B, limited partnership or joint venture. In a limited partnership, there are two types of partners, the general and limited. Each type of partner has different rights and responsibilities. Generally speaking, there is a limit on the liability of a limited partner, while the general partner's liabilities are not limited. In a limited partnership, there can be a general partner and a limited liability partner. C, limited liability partnership. A limited liability partnership, or LLP, is similar to an LP. However, there are no general partners and all partners have limited liability. And this is all important when we get to the financial aspects to see how your banker is going to assess your opportunity. Corporations are the most complicated legal structure that proprietors or partnerships, or than, is a process in which a separate legal entity owned by its shareholders is formed, creates formal ownership shares, which produces taxation and legal distance between the company and the shareholders, has tax advantages for the owners who are usually paid as employees of the corporation, provides some liability protection for the corporation's debts, and offers some measure of protection for the company's name. The company officers and shareholders may come and go, but the corporation exists until it is wound down or dissolved. Corporations must keep meticulous records and report their financial situations to governing authorities yearly. Therefore, their financial statements must be audited annually by qualified accountants because corporations are more costly to operate than sole proprietorships and partnerships. New businesses do not usually incorporate unless they plan to acquire capital through sales of shares or desire greater credibility. Companies usually do not incorporate until they generate at least $50,000 in revenue annually. Your business structures influence financing. Lending institutions have specific requirements based on the type of business you have. The less formal business structure, i.e. sole proprietorship, requires more personal security. The formal business structure requires less personal security and derives the security from the assets of the proposed business. So you need financing. Applying for and obtaining loans are a critical part of the business process. When you're seeking a business loan from a commercial lender, there are a number of things you should be aware of and able to articulate when applying. Three most important things to show a lender are management. Probably the most important thing a lender wants to see is management. The strength of your management will largely determine your ability to generate enough cash flow to repay the loan. The lender will look at your past history in business or indications that you can successfully run a business and make money. Cash flow profitability, the business's ability to generate sufficient cash to repay both the principal and the interest and still leave sufficient cash in the business to run its day-to-day operations. Security. The quality of the security being offered to support the loan is also important because if the loan goes sour, the lender will want ability to seize assets sufficient in value to sell and pay off the balance of the loan. Three keys to obtaining a business loan. Something you should know is some lenders have recently developed innovative lending criteria which still rely on a large extent on an assessment of management. These lenders tend to place less emphasis on security and more on cash flow. One of the tools used when assessing security, particularly in small and medium-sized enterprises, involves credit checks on management. The rationale here is that people who handle their own finances well will likely handle the finances of the business equally well. If that is the case, less security is required to support the loan. And this truly is innovative, and this is something that most people don't know. especially in our First Nations community. Having a good credit score really does matter. Knowing your credit score really does matter. We have to be able, and if you're a manager, having a great credit score matters because you become more viable and more valuable to your nation and your nation's enterprises because of that. So it's always good to keep an eye and tabs on those things. And historically, we just have never really put a lot of emphasis on that. To qualify for financing, you must demonstrate a realistic market and sales potential, provide a solid business plan, have experience or expertise in the chosen field, have a competent management team, have a reasonable financial investment in the enterprise, provide personal credit references or community credit references. So how to finance your business, personal investment. When starting, I don't know what I've done now. When starting a business, your first investor should be yourself with personal money and or assets to secure a loan. Investors love to see that you're fully committed and ready to take a risk on yourself. This applies for communities as well. Love money. This is money loaned or invested by family or friends. Grants. A grant is a sum of money conditionally given by government organizations. You don't have to repay it if you use it under the terms of the grant. Loans. It's not easy to obtain traditional bank loans for startups, but it's possible. To help, there are some government programs to guarantee business loans from financial institutions. These organizations that specialize in lending to new ventures for First Nations. And they are loans and lending institutions that provide the First Citizens Fund providers are All Nations Trust Company, Nuu-chah-nulth Economic Development Corporation, Talahout Aboriginal Capital Corporation, and Tribal Resources Investment Corporation. And I put these up here because it's really critical that everybody know where to go to get money. And not all of us are fortunate to have any NEDCs or Talahout in our backyard. So for our remote and rural nations, this is really critical information. So I'm going to give you an example of a loan fund and what's needed. And I'm using NEDC and I've used Talahout for both, for different clients, but they all have similar requirements. And I do this because I think it's really important that everybody understand and have a personal stake in their business plan development, because you will be more successful if you understand the interworkings of your business plan and what somebody else or your consultant has said on your behalf. This is absolutely critical, and I say it, I come from a nation that invested heavily in a whole bunch of startups, and they're all failing miserably, and I'll tell you why. They didn't have a proper business plan. They weren't guided by appropriate counsel, and now we have no return on investment. So I say this stuff because I absolutely believe it. I see it work when applied, and it's critical. You have to have the proper documentation to help your business grow, and you have to know if it's feasible or not feasible, and you have to understand the return on investment. And most lenders are now looking to this, but where we fall short as First Nations, if you just use your band annual general income as security, you never know the true risks to your business. So NEDC, and I've just used this, Talahout is similar, has general loan funds available with flexible terms, interest rates, repayment options, and requirements. Several other loan funds are available, each with their own requirements, such as Entrepreneurs with Disabilities Loan Fund, Forestry Loan Fund, Fishing Loan Fund, Youth Loan Fund. Loan eligibility. To be eligible for a loan through NEDC, you must either be a Nuu-chah-nulth tribe or a member of Nuu-chah-nulth tribe with reasonable monitoring distance, within a reasonable monitoring distance, or an Aboriginal person, status, non-status, Métis or Inuit, who reside and operate or propose to operate their business on Vancouver Island. All applicants must be 19 years or older. So contact the NEDC and discuss your business ideas with the business development officer. You'll have to complete the appropriate application forms. NEDC will conduct a credit check. Complete and submit a business plan. NEDC will conduct an in-house analysis. The business plan is analyzed and a summary and recommendations are submitted to the delegated approval authority. If the business plan is approved, you'll receive a letter of offer from NEDC. An FCF loan offers a 40% contribution, so that's for Citizen Fund, to the principal and your loan as you pay it off. The lifetime maximum you can borrow is $75,000 plus the administration fee of 1.5%. The terms of the First Citizen Fund loan are as follows. Borrow up to $76,125. A 1.5% borrower's fee applies for the business client services. Flexible amortization, 2 to 10 years, must make sense for the business. Flexible payment terms, semi-monthly, monthly, semi-annual, and annual payment terms available, must make sense for the business. So I give you an example. If you're a fishing business and you only go out a couple times a year, it makes sense that you only make a yearly payment, and that's how you're going to receive your money. Same if you're in the, what do they call that? Like resorts where you're intensive for about 4 months. You might only make it semi-annually, so you make a payment kind of 2 times. 12% fixed interest rate, so it's not cheap, costs lots of money to loan from your First Nations. Economic development corporations. Businesses must be 51% Aboriginal owned and operated. 10% minimum equity required. Every time 15% of the loan is paid off, a contribution of 10% of the principal is applied to the loan. This program is sometimes referred to as the Aboriginal Business Canada, ABC, or Aboriginal Business Development Fund, or Aboriginal Business and Entrepreneurship Fund. So, conditions, contributions to asset in the principal, marketing and operating cost of establishing, expanding and acquiring business, up to $99,999 for individuals, up to $250,000 for community-owned businesses, up to 40% contribution towards eligible startup, and 3 months of operating costs, or 30% towards eligible acquisition or expansion costs. And this would cover what Judith was talking about, the permitting costs, right? That's contributions to the eligible startup, because all the permitting is a part of your startup. Minimum 10% cash equity required, financing required. Ineligible costs include, not exhaustive, land and building, owner's wages, unnecessary costs. So if you got a cost because you filled out a form wrong and you've been delayed, that's your cost. Personal expenses, pre-committed expenses. Ineligible projects include tobacco or alcohol-related activities, sexually exploited or explicit operations, gaming-related businesses, and payday loan and similar type businesses. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So no payday loan people here. So contributions up to 75% for planning and support activities, including business plans, feasibility studies, environmental studies for commercial development, business valuation for business acquisitions, business support, i.e. setting up financial reporting requirements, implementation services, financing not required. The program can provide contributions for marketing initiatives that are local, domestic, or export orientated. Must provide a detailed marketing plan, maximum 60%, no financing required. New Aboriginal Canada and you, working with you to succeed. This publication provides a step-to-step description of what's involved when you apply for assistance of your business proposal. So that's new, and I didn't put the URL for that. Okay. One thing that I can tell everybody is please remember, like Judith said, leave enough time to complete the process and note the costs that are already committed are not eligible expenses. So eligibility. Participant eligibility is limited to Canadian status and non-status First Nations, Inuit, Métis associations, partnerships, or other legal entities on or off reserve, as well as the applicant. Is required to be 19 years or older, reside and operate or propose to operate the business on or service from Vancouver Island, so this is for NEDC. Assess term financing with each application with the expectation of applications for business planning, feasibility studies, and the implementation of a marketing plan. So the application through NEDC is followed. Contact NEDC and discuss your idea and business plan with the Business Development Officer. Complete an application called the Business Proposal Form, BPF. NEDC will conduct a credit check, complete and submit a business plan, and submit an additional information requested by your BDO. The business plan undergoes an in-house analysis. Once accepted, the business plan is submitted for approval to the Delegated Approval Authority. If the request for the contribution is approved, the applicant will receive a letter of offer from NEDC, and a project is monitored for the life of the agreement to ensure the client continues to meet their contractual obligations and to determine success of the project, which is a little different than that other fund. So, what do we do here at NRT? NRT Equity Match. NRT assists BC First Nations entrepreneurs, including bands, to meet their equity requirements by providing a non-repayable contribution towards the applicant's equity. Dollar for dollar, every dollar the applicant contributes will be matched. So when I said you had to provide the 10%, NRT will help you with that 10% by adding you a dollar for dollar match. Maximum $5,000 for individuals, and bands may be eligible for up to $25,000. Equity match must not exceed 25% of eligible project costs. Must be assessing financing from NEDC and or another related lending agents. No additional application necessary. So this is all incorporated into the application. Talahout does the same thing, and any of the others that I've worked with. So this is just an automatic thing that they do now. Big banks. All right. Canada Small Business Financing Act to finance up to 90% of the cost of purchasing or improving land and buildings used for commercial purposes, because you heard me before, the other funds did not allow you to buy land or buildings. Purchasing new or existing renovations to premises occupied by the business as a tenant, purchasing or improving new or used equipment, including commercial vehicles. Who is eligible? Small businesses or operating for a operating for profit in Canada with a gross annual revenue of $5 million or less. How do I apply? Present your business plan directly to a chartered bank or credit union. Big banks lend under the Small Business Financing Act. Band-owned business can access financing for existing and new businesses by leveraging own source revenue streams such as IBAs. I have no idea. It's this one up here, right? Or that one? Can the guy advance it? It's not working. Okay, call a kid. That's what happens in my house when they don't work. I think this battery's dying. There! Oh! Okay. That's also what happens in my house when the batteries die. You just bang it and you might get a little bit more life out of it. All right. Big bank lending on reserve. This is what everybody wants to hear about. Eligible loan purpose, small business, medium-sized business, eligible property if needed, build on land held under a certificate of possession. And so some of our communities have CPs and some don't. Lot must be serviced by roads, hydro, water, septic. So these are some conditions. And I know that there's communities that don't have some of these things. Eligible borrowers, qualified members of the First Nation must meet bank's usual credit requirements. Loan amounts, maximum individual limits set by the First Nations determined by borrower's ability to repay. Fees, borrowers pay any out-of-pocket expenses, i.e. legal fees, inspection fees. Interest rates are negotiated with the band. Prepayment privileges depends on the term chosen. Term and amortization, any term between 1 and 5 years. Maximum amortization is 10 years. Insurance requirements, life and accident and disability insurance are recommended for borrowers who are eligible. Fire insurance over buildings to be assigned to the lender. Security, First Nations to the bank, full financial guarantee for each loan. This is where it gets a little bit trickier. Band to the member, loan promissory agreement. So we see some of this in housing, and we can apply some of it to our thinking in business. But really, this is your transfer payments from INAC securing these loans with the banks. Assignment of fire insurance, all peril insurance, assignment of equipment insurance, member to First Nations, mortgage and transfer of land, life and disability insurance. And this, somebody brought up in an earlier presentation, the First Nations Finance Authority. The First Nations Finance Authority's purposes are to provide investment options and capital planning advice, and perhaps most importantly, access to long-term loans with preferable interest rates. The NFA is not an agent of Her Majesty or a Crown Corporation and is governed solely by the First Nations communities that join as borrowing members. The advantage of joining the FNFA as borrowing members are access to low rates, below bank prime, loans with repayment terms up to 30 years. First Nations choose repayment terms that work best for their budget. FNFA loans do not require collateral. FNFA loans can be used to refinance existing debt, and FNA interest rates and terms parallel those available to provincial and local governments. Most revenue streams are eligible to support FNFA loan requests. Eligible capital projects FNFA can finance include infrastructure, social and economic development, land purchases, independent power projects, community housing, and rolling stock heavy equipment. My assumption is that's a crane or something. FNFA and big banks. FNFA and charter banks complement each other, and as you can see on the slide, on one side you have the First Nations, and they're leveraging their property taxes and their other revenues to achieve FNFA loans to build community buildings, roads, land, all kinds of different things, which is the basis for economic development. And especially if you're one of the treaty nations, this would be really desirable to be able to obtain. But if you're a treaty, you cannot have access to this funding. So if you're Manuth, Niska, Tsawwassen, this does not apply to you at the moment. The bank's purpose is to lend for services and business activity, and you can see that where First Nations come in with their other revenues and they get bank loans and they build for-profit businesses. And this really is a nice segue for those First Nations that are in the First Nations Financial Management Act to access long-term, low-interest debt. So financing for larger projects or off-reserve require different yet similar details for lenders. Fulsome business plan including but not limited company overview, ownership details, key management resumes, target market, sales strategy, competitors, competitive advantages, key risks, and purpose for financing. Historical financial statements, interim financial statements with prior year comparison, receivable, payable, inventory and equipment listings, real estate appraisals, and environmental assessments. Financial statement projections, details on what the financing will be used for. I think I am done. Right, so that's just for anything else. So my intent was to go through this and give you an overview of the financing options that are available to First Nations, right from an entrepreneur to a band needing to access up to about $30 million to build whatever it is that they're building in their community, and show you the different options and the interest rates and all of the hoops that you have to go to. Key thing here is every single one of these options you require a business plan. Every single one of the options requires you to identify who the management is going to be. And you'll need to be able to be assessed. So that's my story. Questions? Yes.
Good afternoon. Michelle.
Yes.
My name is Bertram Mercer. I'm from the Manager for Economic Development for the Nisga'a Nation, as represented by Nisga'a government. In northwestern British Columbia, just an observation. A lot of people depend heavily on them, especially entrepreneurs. And 1637 Community Futures assists entrepreneurs in developing their business plans or feasibility studies because they're mandated by WED.
Community Futures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, thanks. Judith.
Thanks, Michelle. It's very comprehensive. I just wanted to also suggest that when you're developing your partnership, that sometimes you might be negotiating for 15%, and your company's going to help you put up equity. They might cut you back to 10% and put the money in for you. So there are deals that you can negotiate for your partner to pay for your equity, because hopefully the whole capital is going to be covered by a loan, or pay back some of the First Nations in Manitoba that are working with Manitoba Hydro are paying back their part of the equity through payments that are, so be creative, and that's all I wanted to say is be creative, is that sometimes you can actually get people to put it up. And in the good old days before NISGA, the Supreme Court of Canada, we used to have one of our partners put up all the money for accommodation, and so you can still try and negotiate that, but I think times have changed on that. But just try and find what you can as well in your business deals.
Absolutely. And I think I must have glossed over this. There's several ways to finance your company for the purpose. I'm only focusing on a few, but assets, the vendor will financing payments can be spread over a certain number of years and reduces the outlay over time. So that's absolutely true. I've seen it myself in some of the communities that I work, where the vendor actually puts up the money and that becomes the equity match for the First Nation. Yes.
Good afternoon, Arthur Mercer. Just one observation on when you're forming partnerships or any business development, one of the areas is when you want to mitigate your liabilities. And companies don't say this. If they're a prime in your partnership or JV, they can port your company under their insurance service provider as just being a named insured, and it costs nothing. And that's a protection for your company. Thanks.
Yeah. There is so many things that the financing pieces. What my main message, and I hope I conveyed it, is know your business plan, know your partnership agreement, know all of these aspects, because these really drive things. And I say this because, and I could have talked about interest rates and stuff, 1%, 0.5% on $10 million is a lot of money a year. 1% over $1 million could end up bankrupting you. All of these things really need to be negotiated. Even though we own, or I think we own, these First Nations economic development companies, negotiate with them. If they tell you 12%, sit at the table, hammer them back, right? Push them to 7, push them to 6, figure it out. But I say that because any percentage point, and same with bank fees. There's another one. Negotiate your bank fees. You could be losing money, and don't always use the most conventional or what they tell you. If you need insurance and they're trying to sell you insurance from their platform, seek a third party. Find insurance from outside platform. I say that always now because you can just save so much money by just doing a little bit more research. So hopefully this PowerPoint will help people in the future understand where to get money. Thank you.